Aquarius, take a breath and listen closely. If you found this video right now, it's not random. Something in you has shifted. You may not even have words for it yet, but they feel it. Not because you said goodbye, not because you explained, but because your energy no longer reaches for them the same way. Tonight, this message is not about chasing love. It's about what happens when you finally choose yourself. Before we go any further, comment one sentence below, "I am open to receiving this message." Because what you're about to hear next may explain why their silence feels heavier and why this connection isn't finished unfolding yet. Stay with me. Aquarius, I want you to imagine this moment as if it's just you and me here. No crowd, no noise, just a quiet room, late at night. And the truth finally has space to land. There's something different about you now. You've felt it, haven't you? Not as a sudden decision, not as a dramatic change, but as a quiet shift that happened while you weren't looking. You didn't wake up one day and decide to be colder. You didn't choose distance out of spite or ego. What changed is simpler than that, and deeper. You stopped giving your energy away without being met. You stopped explaining yourself to people who weren't listening. You stopped overreaching, overextending, overfunctioning for love. And that choice didn't come from anger. It came from exhaustion. From wisdom earned the hard way. From realizing that love should not require you to disappear. You see, Aquarius, when someone has grown used to your presence, your silence speaks louder than any goodbye ever could. They notice it in the smallest places, in the pause where your message used to be, in the space where your understanding once softened everything, in the absence of your emotional labor. You didn't announce your shift. You didn't need to. Energy always tells the truth before words catch up. What they're feeling now isn't confusion, it's contrast. They feel the difference between who you were when you kept the door open and who you are now that you've gently closed it, not slammed it, just closed it. And that quiet, hot closing echoes, louder than arguments, louder than explanations, louder than promises ever were. You might wonder if they even notice, if they care, if any of this matters. Let me tell you something honestly. From one soul to another, they feel it deeply. Because when you stop pouring energy into someone, they are left alone with themselves. With the silence you used to fill, with the emotional weight you used to carry for both of you. And that can feel like emptiness, not because you abandoned them, but because you were never meant to be their emotional home. Aquarius, this is not you becoming distant. This is you becoming intact. You didn't lose your softness. You learned where to place it. You didn't lose your heart. You stopped handing it to someone who didn't know how to hold it. If part of you feels strange right now, like you're standing between who you were and who you're becoming, that's normal. Growth always feels quiet at first, almost invisible, until someone who benefited from the old version of you starts to feel the absence. And here's the part I want you to sit with. Just for a moment, you are not responsible for filling the space you outgrew. You are allowed to change. You are allowed to pull back. You are allowed to choose peace over repetition. Take a breath here, let that land. Because what's unfolding now is not about loss. It's about recognition. And what begins to surface next may explain why their emotions are suddenly stirring in ways they can't ignore anymore. Stay with me. Aquarius, stay right here with me. There's something I want to say gently, because this part matters more than you think. For a long time, they got used to you being there, not just physically, energetically, emotionally. They got used to the way you understood them without being asked, the way you waited without pressure, the way you stayed open even when they were unsure, inconsistent, or distant. You became the steady presence, the soft place to land, the one who kept the door unlocked. And the truth is, when someone gets used to that kind of love, they stop noticing it. Not because they are cruel, but because constancy can become invisible. You didn't realize it at first either. You thought patience was love. You thought understanding would eventually be returned. You thought if you just stayed a little longer, things would meet you halfway. But something inside you began to quiet down. Not loudly. Not enough for you to notice the imbalance, and slowly, almost without announcing it, you stopped running toward them. You stopped fixing what they wouldn't face. You stopped explaining what they refused to hear. You stopped proving your worth through endurance. Aquarius, this is the moment everything shifted. Because when you pulled your energy back, there was suddenly space where you used to be, and they felt it, not right away. At first, they assumed you would return, that you were just tired, that this was temporary. But time passed, and the silence stayed different. They started to notice the absence of your emotional effort, the way problems no longer softened on their own, the way their days felt heavier without your quiet support. What they're feeling now isn't anger. It's not clarity yet either. It's unease. Because for the first time, they are standing in the space you used to hold for both of you. and that space feels empty. You see, Aquarius, your presence was never guaranteed. It was given, freely, lovingly. And when something freely given is withdrawn, its value suddenly becomes clear. This is where the panic begins, not the loud kind, the internal kind, the kind that asks questions late at night. Why does this feel different? Why do I feel disconnected? Why can't I reach them the way I used to? They may not have words for it yet. They may not even admit it to themselves. But the truth is simple. They are realizing that your energy was a gift, not a given. And Aquarius, I want you to hear this clearly. You did not take something away to punish them. You returned something to yourself. That matters. You didn't leave. You came home. If part of you feels conflicted right now, that's human. You can still care and choose yourself. You can still love and create distance. Those things are not opposites. This is what emotional maturity looks like. Quiet, firm, self-respecting. Let yourself breathe here, because as this realization settles in for them, something else begins to stir. Something they can no longer ignore. And the way this connection responds to your shift may surprise you more than you expect. Stay with me, Aquarius. Let me say this slowly, because this part deserves tenderness. You still think about them. Of course you do. Sometimes it comes out of nowhere. A quiet moment, a familiar song, a memory that drifts in without asking. You wonder how they are, if they are sleeping well, if life has been kind to them lately, if they ever stop and think of you too. That does not make you weak. It makes you human. But something important has changed inside you, and I want you to notice it. You are no longer turning that love inward as blame. You are no longer asking yourself, what did I do wrong? Why was I not enough? What should I have done differently? That voice has softened, and in its place there is clarity. Not harsh clarity, not bitter clarity. Just truth. You are beginning to see the full picture now. Not just the moments where you tried harder, but the moments where they could not meet you. Not because you lacked value, but because they lacked capacity. This realization is quiet, but it is powerful. It is the moment you stop carrying responsibility for someone else's emotional limits. The moment you understand that love does not heal people who refuse to look inward. The moment you accept that you did not fail. You showed up as yourself, fully, openly, and Aquarius, that matters. You gave from a genuine place. You did not manipulate. You did not withhold. You did not love halfway. The outcome was never a reflection of your worth. It was a reflection of where they were in their own healing. This is where your growth becomes visible to yourself. You can miss someone and still honor your boundaries. You can care deeply and still refuse to abandon yourself. You can hold love without reopening the door to pain. That balance is emotional maturity. It did not come easily. It came through nights where you questioned yourself. Through moments where you wanted to reach out but chose silence instead. Through choosing dignity over familiar comfort. There is strength in that, even if it feels tender. You are learning something rare right now. How to let memory exist without letting it define your future. How to hold compassion without sacrificing self-respect. How to grieve what was without erasing who you are becoming. And I want to pause here with you, just for a breath. Because this is a moment many people never reach. They either harden or they repeat the pattern. You did neither. You stayed soft and you stayed awake. That awareness is healing, and it changes how everything unfolds from here. Because when you stop blaming yourself, you stop chasing explanations. You stop negotiating your value. You stop shrinking to be understood. And something very subtle begins to shift in the space between you and them. Not through words, not through messages, but through energy. As this understanding settles into you, it quietly reshapes the connection itself, and the way they respond to that change may reveal more than any conversation ever could. Stay with me. Aquarius, I want you to stay with this feeling for a moment, because this part is subtle, and it carries weight. You never stood in front of them and said, I am leaving. You never drew a hard line or made a dramatic it did not slam doors. You did not disappear overnight. But energy moves long before words do. What they are feeling now is not abandonment in the way people usually imagine it. It is something quieter, more disorienting. It is the sense that the version of you they once leaned on is no longer available. They reach out emotionally and feel less resistance, less pull, less access. Not because you became guarded, but because you stopped offering yourself to be managed. They notice it in how conversations land, in how your presence feels more contained, in how they can no longer stir your emotions the way they once could. And that unsettles them. Because when someone is used to having influence over your emotional world, losing that access feels like loss. They may not understand it clearly. They may not articulate it well, but they feel the distance growing even though you never named it. This is where confusion sets in. They sense that you are still kind, still respectful, still emotionally aware, Yet somehow they cannot reach you the same way. That gap touches something very old inside them. A fear they may not even know they carry. The fear of being left behind, of being replaced, of no longer mattering in the way they assumed they always would. And Aquarius, this is important. You did not create that fear. You revealed it. You simply stepped back into yourself. And in doing so, you stop buffering them from their own inner work. That can feel like separation even when no separation was spoken. They feel as though you have moved on, not because you found someone else, but because you are no longer emotionally orbiting them. And that is a loss of control more than a loss of connection. You see, as long as your emotions were easily accessible, as long as your understanding was automatic, as long as your presence could be counted on, they did not have to question their place in your life. Now they do. And that uncertainty is uncomfortable. It forces reflection. It forces awareness. It forces them to sit with the possibility that you are no longer shaped around them. Aquarius, this is not cruelty. This is growth. You did not withdraw love, you withdrew permission. Permission to be taken for granted. Permission to be emotionally directed. Permission to be the steady ground while someone else remained undecided. And even though you never said goodbye, your energy said something very clear. I am still here. But I am not available in the same way. That message lands deeply, especially for someone who relied on your emotional presence without realizing how much space it held. If part of you wonders if this makes you cold, if this makes you distant, if this makes you unkind, I want you to breathe that question out. Boundaries are not abandonment. Self-respect is not rejection. Choosing yourself is not walking away. It is standing still and letting others feel the distance they helped create. There is no need to explain yourself now. No need to justify the change. Your energy is already doing the talking. And as they sit with that realization, as the absence becomes clearer, something else begins to surface within them. A recognition they cannot rush past anymore. Let that unfold at its own pace. I am right here with you. Aquarius, let's talk about the tension you can feel even when nothing is being said. Because this is where things become complicated, not on the surface, but underneath it all. They do not want to lose you. That much is true. Not in a dramatic movie, scene kind of way, but in a quiet, almost instinctive way. You matter to them more than they know how to admit. And yet there is something inside them that tightens every time closeness asks more of them. They want your presence, but fear what it requires. They want your warmth, but resist the vulnerability it invites. So they hover, not fully stepping away, not fully stepping in. They tell themselves they are fine. They stay busy. They fill their days with noise, work, distractions, movement, anything that keeps them from sitting still with their own feelings. Because stillness is dangerous for someone who has not learned how to be honest with themselves. Distance becomes their armor, not because they do not care, but because caring feels risky. And you can sense it, that pull and push, that quiet contradiction. They check in on you without checking in with you. They watch from a distance. They notice when you glow. They notice when you pull back. And it stirs something uncomfortable. They miss you, but they also miss the version of you that asked for less, that waited longer, that made it easier for them to stay guarded. This is where immaturity shows itself not as cruelty, but as avoidance. They would rather appear unaffected than admit they are afraid. Afraid of intimacy. Afraid of commitment. Afraid of being seen and still not knowing how to show up fully. Aquarius, this is not your failure. You cannot love someone into emotional readiness. You cannot hold space for someone who refuses to step into it. And you have begun to understand that. You can feel compassion for their fear without volunteering yourself as the solution. That is growth. You are no longer confusing longing with alignment. You are no longer mistaking attention for emotional availability. And that shift changes everything. Because now when they feel the ache of missing you, it is not soothed by your reassurance. It is not softened by your understanding. They are left with it, alone. And that is uncomfortable, but also necessary. Sometimes the only way someone learns the value of connection is by feeling the cost of keeping their heart closed. You are not punishing them. You are respecting yourself. And if they truly miss you, not just your energy, not just the comfort you provided, but you, then that truth will eventually ask something of them. Honesty, courage, presence. Whether they rise to meet that or continue to retreat into distance is not something you need to manage anymore. Your role has changed. You are no longer waiting to be chosen. You are choosing clarity. You are choosing peace. You are choosing to remain open without being exposed. That balance is rare, and it is powerful. Take a moment here. Let that sink in. Because what comes next is not about them anymore. It is about the way you begin to move forward and how that movement starts to reshape everything around you in ways you may not fully see yet. Stay with me. Aquarius, there's a moment that happens quietly. almost without announcement, and I think you are living inside it right now. It begins when you start to feel like yourself again, not the version of you that was waiting, or hoping, or holding space that was never returned, but the version of you that breathes deeper, laughs a little easier, moves through the day with more color in your chest. You return to things that belong to you. Old joys, small rituals, conversations that feel light instead of heavy, time with people who know how to meet you without effort. And something in your energy changes. You are not performing happiness, you are inhabiting it. You begin to glow in a way that cannot be forced. Not loudly, not for attention, but steadily, naturally. This is when they notice. Not because you told them you were doing better, not because you posted proof, but because your absence starts to feel louder than your presence ever was. They sense it in the way you are no longer waiting at the edge of their life. They feel it in the shift of how you show up. More rooted, more whole, less available for confusion. And that realization hits them slowly. Then all at once. You were never replaceable. They just didn't understand your value while they had access to it. They may try to convince themselves otherwise, tell themselves they can move on easily, that there are other connections, other faces, other distractions. But energy does not lie. They may meet new people, have new conversations, step into new situations, and still something feels missing, because what they lost was not companionship. It was resonance. You see, Aquarius, your presence was not about filling space. It was about depth, about seeing beyond words, about offering understanding without asking for performance. That kind of energy leaves an imprint. And when it's gone, the contrast becomes impossible to ignore. They begin to realize that what they took for granted was rare, not loud, not dramatic, but deeply stabilizing. And now that you are no longer orbiting them, no longer shaping yourself around their needs, no longer dimming to stay connected, they are left with the truth. You did not disappear, you evolved, and evolution changes the field around you. This is not about proving anything to them. It never was. It is about you reclaiming your life, your joy, your rhythm, and in doing so you stop being an option and become a presence that cannot be replicated. Aquarius, this is the power of choosing yourself without bitterness, without performance, without explanation. You simply live, and that quiet authenticity does more than any argument ever could. Let yourself feel this moment, not with pride, but with calm assurance. You are not glowing to be seen. You are glowing because you are aligned. And alignment has a way of revealing truth to everyone involved. As this awareness settles in for them, and as your life continues to expand, something begins to reorganize naturally. Not through force, not through effort, but through clarity. Stay here with me, because the way you are stepping forward now sets the tone for everything that follows. Aquarius, there is a quiet crossroads you are standing in now. No signs, no arrows, just a feeling in your chest that tells you something is changing. One path feels familiar. You know its shape. You know its patterns. You know how it asks you to bend to wait to hope to explain yourself one more time. The other path is quieter, less defined. It does not promise certainty, only honesty. And that is why it feels heavier to step toward. You can still feel the pull of what once was. Not because it was perfect, but because it is known. Because you invested there. Because part of you learned how to survive in that space. Letting go of the familiar can hurt even when the familiar hurt you first. So if there is pain in you right now, it does not mean you are doing the wrong thing. It means you are doing a brave thing. You are choosing yourself without knowing exactly what comes next. That takes courage. This choice does not look dramatic from the outside. There are no speeches, no ultimatums, no grand declarations. It looks like quiet decisions made alone. Like saying no when you used to say yes. Like pausing instead of reacting. Like listening to the tightness in your body instead of talking yourself out of it. You are learning to set boundaries not as walls but as clarity. You are learning to listen to your real needs, not the ones shaped by fear of losing someone. And perhaps most importantly, you are learning how to stop betraying yourself to keep someone else comfortable. That is not coldness. That is self-respect. Emotional maturity does not announce itself loudly. It arrives softly. Through consistency, through alignment, through choosing peace over repetition. There may be moments when you question this path. Moments when loneliness whispers doubts. Moments when memory tries to rewrite the past. That is normal. Growth often feels like grief before it feels like freedom. But notice this, even in the ache, there is a steadiness now. You are no longer trying to convince anyone of your worth. You are no longer waiting to be chosen. You are choosing, and that changes the way you stand in the world. Aquarius, your sensitivity was never a weakness. It was simply unprotected for too long. Now you are learning how to hold it with care, how to keep your heart open without leaving it exposed. That balance is wisdom. You are not closing yourself off from love. You are refining what love means to you. You are making space for connection that feels mutual, grounded, present. And even if the future still feels unclear, there is one thing that is certain. You will not abandon yourself again. Let that truth settle. Let it anchor you. Because as you continue forward with this quiet strength, with this honesty, with this deeper relationship to yourself, the world begins to respond differently. Not all at once, not loudly, but in ways that feel real. And as that response starts to take shape, you may begin to notice something subtle, something reassuring, something that feels like confirmation. Stay close. There is more clarity ahead than you realize right now. Aquarius, as the year begins to soften around you, I want you to hear this clearly. This quiet you are living in right now is not a punishment. It is not a delay. It is not the universe withholding something from you. It is a pause with purpose. A space where nothing is demanding you perform. A space where you are no longer required to prove your worth. A space where your nervous system can finally rest. Silence can feel uncomfortable when you are used to noise. When you are used to fixing. When you are used to holding everything together. But this silence is different. It is holding you. This is where forgiveness begins. Not for anyone else. For you. Forgiveness for the times you stayed too long. For the times you explained yourself into exhaustion. For the times you mistook patience for love. You did what you knew how to do then. With the awareness you had then. From the heart you had then. And that deserves compassion, not judgment. As you let old beliefs loosen their grip, something lighter moves in. The belief that love must hurt to be real. The belief that you must earn presence. The belief that being chosen means being available at all costs. You are stepping into a version of yourself that no longer negotiates safety, that no longer tolerates confusion as intimacy, that no longer accepts emotional crumbs as connection. This is not you becoming rigid. This is you becoming clear. And clarity changes the kind of love that can reach you. If there is meant to be a return, it will not come through guilt or longing. It will come through accountability, through growth, through someone meeting you where you stand now, not where you used to wait. And if that return never arrives, this path is still right. Because what you are building is not a relationship. It is a life where your peace is protected, where your joy is not postponed, where your intuition is trusted. Aquarius, you are not alone in this. Even when the nights feel long, even when questions echo, even when the future feels unwritten, you are held by your own wisdom, by the growth you cannot unsee, by the alignment forming quietly around you. And yes, they feel your absence, more than they expected, more than they admit. But that is not your responsibility to carry. Your responsibility is to keep choosing yourself with gentleness, with patience, with courage. Let this year meet you not as someone waiting to be found, but as someone who knows where they stand. Stay here. Stay open. Stay true. There is a sense of arrival ahead that does not require you to chase it. And as you continue walking this way one steady step at a time, you may begin to notice that what you were searching for has been moving towards you all along. Aquarius, before you go, there's one thing I want you to hear clearly. The shift you're feeling right now was never about losing someone. It was about finding yourself again in a place you once abandoned. That's the part no one talks about. When you stop chasing, when you stop explaining, when you stop shrinking to stay connected, something ancient inside you wakes up. And here's the surprising truth. The moment you chose yourself was the moment everything began to realign. Not loudly, not instantly, but honestly. That's why this message found you tonight. Not to pull you back into the past, but to remind you that you are no longer who you were when you accepted less than you deserved. If this resonated, leave a comment below with one simple sentence. I choose myself with clarity and trust, not for anyone else to see, but to anchor it inside you. And if this space feels like home, if these words feel like they meet you where you are, subscribe. Stay close. This is a community of Aquarius souls who are done dimming, done waiting, and done doubting their inner knowing. Trust yourself, even when the path feels quiet, especially then, because the journey doesn't end here, it deepens. Another message is already forming. Another layer of clarity is on its way, and when it arrives, you'll be ready to hear it. Until then, take a breath. Feel your feet on the ground. And remember, you were never meant to be forgotten, only remembered by yourself first. Good night, Aquarius. We'll continue this journey together.